We've got some breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Our guys with CBS have been able to confirm that Aaron Rodgers will stay with the Packers for 4 years. It's reported at $200 million, and NFL Network adding that $153 million of that is guaranteed. He's 38 years old, stays with a franchise that he's won a Super Bowl title with, but has been seeking that second title. And in terms of highest paid quarterbacks in AAV, this would set him above Patrick Mahomes by $5 million, but of course a much shorter deal than Mahomes got his 10. Of course, Patrick Mahomes also much earlier in his career, not as far as Aaron Rodgers is in his career. All right, let's bring in senior NFL reporter Jonathan Jones. JJ, what more can you tell us about Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay?
So he's back with the Pack. I'm not entirely sure, Tommy, when he ultimately made his decision, but here it is, making his decision. I'm told that this contract has been on the table for some time. We, frankly, have been reporting for months that his next contract, which certainly would be coming prior to the 2022 season, would be in the neighborhood of $50 million per year. I'm still working on those final numbers, whether it's actually a 4-year deal and $200 million or it's actually a 5-year deal and closer to $230 million. So, we're still navigating those waters as we normally do as soon as these mega deals come out. But in terms of new money, it was always going to be around $50 million, and that is what we are looking at now. According to my sources, Rodgers had very much had an eye on the Denver Broncos, something we've been reporting for months, but ultimately decides to stay with the Green Bay Packers. And now what's next for the Packers? Well, by the 4 p.m. Eastern deadline, they're going to have to tag Davante Adams if they don't already have some long-term deal and extension in place for Adams. Short of that, they will tag him. They will work toward making sure that they can secure his services for the foreseeable future. But it does appear that Aaron Rodgers, despite all the drama of the past nearly year, he will remain with the Green Bay Packers and very well may retire with the Green Bay Packers.
What does this agreement and extension do for you, at least from what you've heard? Are they past what happened in the summer? Are they looking forward to having another crack at it? 3 good years of getting close to the Super Bowl but not getting there. Do you think this puts it all behind them, or can you put in a percentage, JJ?
Well, I think when you consider Aaron Rodgers and the person that he is, or at least the person that he's allowed us to see during his time in the spotlight, but certainly in the past year or so, we know that he holds grudges. We know that he has quite the memory. And so is it bygones will be bygones? He has spoke very highly always of his head coach, Matt LaFleur, and he wanted Tom Clements, the quarterback's coach there. But we know that he had an issue with Brian Gutekunst, the general manager, and he didn't really mince words talking about how the bridge needed to be repaired. And over the past several months throughout the season, it did appear that the talking and getting to know Goody allowed him to repair that bridge, or allow both sides to do that. And so is this something that we're going to be dealing with next offseason and the offseason after that? Obviously, the Green Bay Packers hope not, and I am excited to hear from Aaron Rodgers, very likely on his buddy, the Pat McAfee show, to figure out what more went into this decision. But if you're Aaron Rodgers, if you are wondering where the grass is greener with the Denver Broncos in a very difficult AFC West, if you're looking at the Tennessee Titans, perhaps, and the maneuvers that they would have to make in order to secure his services, you look at the Green Bay Packers, 3 consecutive 13-win seasons, and the natural sort of home field advantage of playing in Lambeau and the creature comforts that all of that has, along with the fact that you would have Davante Adams there, at least for this season and very likely for the long term, if they can agree on some sort of DeAndre Hopkins-like deal for Adams moving forward. That seems to be the math that Aaron Rodgers did, and that's the solution that he came with.
I'm glad you brought up the AFC, because the thought was if Aaron Rodgers was to leave Lambeau and go to that conference, it's a much tougher road to get to the Super Bowl. As it stands now, with Aaron Rodgers back and predicted tag for Davante Adams, where do you have Green Bay in terms of the NFC at the moment?
Well, just look at the NFC North. This is a division that he and the Packers have dominated since he took over as the starting quarterback, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. You have a changing of the guard with the Chicago Bears in terms of their head coach and general manager, hoping to bring them out of the doldrums of the NFC with Justin Fields, but you're not putting them on the same level as the Green Bay Packers. Minnesota Vikings starting fresh with their GM and head coach, but of course with Kirk Cousins and plenty of cap issues there. And the Detroit Lions as they try to dig themselves out of the hole that they've been in for some time now. So you look at the NFC North, and it seems like, yeah, if you want to win 12, 13 games, there are a few divisions where you can do it as easily as in the NFC North if you're the Green Bay Packers. And meanwhile, you look out in the NFC landscape, obviously Tom Brady retiring opens things up there. You obviously have to look at the Rams. How long are they going to keep that group together with the salary cap considerations and concerns over the years? So are the Packers a favorite to make it to the Super Bowl? I think that they're a top two in the NFC, certainly, as they can keep this band together. Now, to be clear, they still have plenty of other cap considerations. There's still work to be done. But removing a very large cap figure that Rodgers would have this season, upwards of $40 million, shrinking that down just a little bit, that's going to give the Packers some breathing room, at least to take care of some of their own guys. They're not going to be big splash free agent guys in the first wave, but they have been able to secure the four-time NFL MVP. They will keep Davante Adams at least for the 2022 season. And so this is already the Green Bay Packers are winning free agency.
Let me wrap up with this. It's a follow-up we just had, and I'll let you go on that. You mentioned there's still some things to be done. What's going to be the next order of business for LaFleur and Gutekunst in terms of off-season targets, guys they perhaps might want to keep there, JJ?
Yeah, they're going to have to look certainly at tight end. You look at the defense and some questions that they're going to have there moving forward. On the other side of the football, we see their free agents there, of course. Devondre Campbell, I'm not sure they're going to be able to keep him. You know, they have a lot of questions there at corner. So, yeah, Davante Adams is a free agent until at some point here in the next 4 hours where he will no longer be a free agent and will be under contract. But certainly, if you are handicapping the Green Bay Packers odds to win the NFC North, they will win the NFC North so long as these guys are healthy. And then you look at a Jordan Love. Does he become expendable at this point if you're the Packers? You spent a first-round pick on him, a late first-round pick, but you maneuvered to go up for him 2 drafts ago. And so what becomes of Jordan Love? Do you try to deal him in order to get some sort of compensation back? A player that can help you win a championship? Rodgers only has 1 ring. Maybe that is in the cards. When you sign Aaron Rodgers to a 4-year extension, it makes the first-round quarterback that you took 2 drafts ago very expendable. And I would use whatever I can get for him in order to make sure that I have the best team moving forward to win another championship up there. So maybe that's a move that we're going to see over the next couple of months there in Green Bay.
Jonathan Jones with the breaking news and the very latest. JJ certainly appreciated talking about him being the top 2, the Packers, that is, top 2 in terms of NFC power ranking. It is the Green Bay Packers and LA Rams, the NFC, both 12-1 to win the Lombardi, according to Caesar Sportsbook. Those 2 teams trail the Chiefs and the Bills. KC coming at 7-1, Buffalo plus 750. This will be talked about on the Pick 6 podcast with host Will Brinson and the Super Friends. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, continuing
that breaking news here at CBS Sports HQ when it comes to Aaron Rodgers staying with the Packers after agreeing to a 4-year, $200 million deal, making him the highest player in the NFL at $50 million per year. That confirmed by our Jason La Canfora, of course. The $153 million is just reported right now, guaranteed there when it comes to him. Of course, this whole offseason leading up to this year, this past season, if he would come back, say he'd love ball, guess he loves $50 million for the next 4 years as well to stay with Green Bay and make another run and maybe at another Lombardi there. For more on this, our Jason La Canfora tapping in, senior NFL writer, JLC. The latest, of course, on this, just this coming out not too long ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, we knew that if the Green Bay Packers were going to secure the rights of Aaron Rodgers into the future, it was going to cost them a pretty penny. $50 million had been floating around for quite some time as the quarterback's likely asking price. This back and forth has been going on for a while, and Rodgers has signed on board. I would just say the key takeaway for me is that he gets his $50 million a year, and he'll be able to decide from year to year whether he wants to keep going or retiring. He's not playing 4 more years. I don't think anybody close to him thinks he's playing 4 more years. He's trying to chase 1 more ring. But the Packers need 4 years for cap purposes at the very least to try to spread this thing out. The next move will be Davante Adams getting franchise tagged. Rodgers isn't coming back unless the number 1 receiver on the team, and some would say the number 1 receiver in the game, is joining him in this quest to try to get 1 more ring together. And it certainly begs the question of what the heck were the Packers thinking a few years back drafting Jordan Love, which triggered all this, got them into a pickle with their quarterback last year. They end up giving Rodgers another extension instead of ever playing Jordan Love in a game of their own volition. I mean, he had to fill in once, didn't go real well. But clearly they made a gross miscalculation a few years ago that cost them draft capital in terms of the assets they invested in Jordan Love, cost them the ability to improve their team in real time. And now, because of the aggrieved Aaron Rodgers, it's cost them financially to the tune of this late in his career getting $50 million a year. It better end up with a Lombardi trophy on Lombardi Way.
All right, so they got Rodgers, of course, nailed down there. We mentioned that for the first 4 years. Outside of that, and you mentioned Davante Adams, we assume he's going to get the tag, but they still have some holes here. How does this contract kind of help them with maybe retaining some of those guys or looking at guys in the free agency market?
Well, I mean, if you have Aaron Rodgers, people want to come play with you. And I mean, that's the reality, right? I mean, this is a team that's been sniffing around the Super Bowl for a few years now. So certainly Aaron Rodgers versus Jordan Love, if a veteran free agent who's, lower tier, mid tier is choosing between a couple teams on a prove-it deal, he'll take less to go to Green Bay to try to win a Super Bowl, make playoff money, and play around other good players, which, makes your film look better. And maybe you're more attractive the next year. But look, this is not going to be the same team. It's not going to be Tampa from the year they won the Super Bowl to the following year, keeping all 22 starters. There's going to be a purge coming on defense. That's just the reality of the situation. Zadarius Smith, I can't imagine he's back there. Other guys will be cut. There's a salary cap. That's the cost of doing business, especially when you're going to have Aaron Rodgers making $50 a year. You're going to have Adams on a franchise tag. There will be an opportunity cost here of guys who can't come back into the fold. They're going to have to restructure some contracts, cut some guys, just to be able to get around the cap. But that doesn't leave you much room to do much else. So it will be fascinating to watch this play out over the offseason. How hamstrung are they? How good does this roster look in 22 versus 2021? And there's also, again, the reality that at this stage of his career, as we've gotten deeper into the season, Aaron Rodgers hasn't played his best ball in the playoffs. And this is as all in as the Rams were a year ago or the Bucs were a year ago. This is feast or famine. This is the last team standing, or major questions going to be asked about this front office.
You look at it now, you just mentioned, of course, trying to make a run into the postseason. It's been a while since they won that Super Bowl there. This may be the last hurrah for Aaron Rodgers, getting Davante Adams back. You mentioned the cap situation. The Rams are defending champs. On the other side, you got a bunch of young guns in the AFC. Based on what you see right now, no, free agency hasn't started yet. Is this a team that can maybe push the envelope and win a championship this season?
Well, again, they're in the right conference. Even if they do have a number of departures and some key veterans who they're going to lose in unrestricted free agency and some guys they're going to have to cut, with Aaron Rodgers playing an NFC schedule that's going to be against a lot of watered-down teams, even if some people do fix some of their ills in free agency in the draft, it's the weaker conference by far. It has the weaker quarterbacks by far. But all those regular season wins, they got to win a Super Bowl. And to win a Super Bowl, they're going to have to probably beat a Joe Burrow, a Patrick Mahomes, Allen, Lamar. You look at that other conference, getting to the Super Bowl, not good enough. They've got to slay the dragon. And I'll be fascinated to see what that defensive roster looks like when we get to September, because it's going to be far less star-studded than it was a few years back when they made that initial splurge and got Adrian Amos and Zadarius Smith and rebuilt that thing from scratch.
See how that pans out there. Of course, the number one step, taking care of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. We'll see how that pans out. Jason Lagaford tapping the breaking news. Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay 4 years, $200 million. By the way, that $50 million, our Jason Lagaford confirming that AAV makes him now the highest paid player. Don't forget the conversation continues. All things covered. Patrick Peterson and Brian McFadden. I'm sure this will be a breakdown as well as we head into the offseason and into next year as well. Download and give the guys a follow.
Let's welcome in our draft expert, Ryan Wilson, to talk about all of this. Look, we've been talking about it enough that I'm going to start with Jordan Love with you, Ryan. When we look at the Packers trading up to get Jordan Love in the 2020 draft, how is that going to be now viewed in history?
Yeah, not great. And I'm going to ask you, man, to see if you remember, when's the last time the Packers drafted a wide receiver in the first round?
2010?
2002. Use that fun fact before I could use it. So it's been a minute, as the kids like to say, and they traded up for Jordan Love. Brandon Ayuk went one pick ahead of them. T. Higgins was available. Michael Pittman was available. They could have even traded up a few picks higher and gotten Justin Jefferson, but they went with Jordan Love, and that sort of led to all the things that followed in the months since, in terms of Aaron Rodgers being a little put off over the summer and then being wishy-washy about whether he wanted to play in Green Bay. Clearly, money talks, and I think Green Bay obviously is the right landing spot for him, but why did you take Jordan Love back in 2020? That's the big question. Now the other question, the follow-up is, what happens to Jordan Love? Is he happy sitting on the bench? I would imagine he wants to play as a former first-round pick and a competitor. And the other thing to think about is we've talked countless times about how this draft class, a quarterback, isn't great. If Jordan Love was coming out in this draft class, he'd be QB1, and I would imagine the Packers are pushing that narrative to teams that are looking to draft quarterbacks, whether in round 1 or maybe even round 2. I would be interested to see, and I need to figure out, talk to some folks, whether he's worth first-round compensation or maybe the Packers would have to settle for a second-round pick. But I think there are a lot of teams, Washington, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, that might be interested in a Jordan Love type player for the right price. And the right price might be a high second-round pick, or maybe even where the Steelers pick at 20. That might be they might be willing to part with that in order to get Jordan Love, because you have a sense of what he can do at the NFL level. He hasn't been great in the one start he had last year, but you have some tape on him in preseason, and you don't know what these guys coming out in the NFL are going to be. The Malik Willis's, the Kenny Pickett's of the world. So that's the next step in terms of Jordan Love's story, but as we sit here, Aaron Rodgers he ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, he's not. You know, Ryan, when we were going through your mock draft yesterday, there was a handful of teams that were looking at Aaron Rodgers, teams like the Broncos. And we said, okay, we think they're going to do this, but if they get Aaron Rodgers, how many of these teams now are having to readjust what they're going to do over the next couple of weeks because Aaron Rodgers will not be there anymore?
Right, so he's the first chip to fall, so to speak, and we heard Brady and Danny talk about the other free agent quarterbacks that could be in the conversation, the Russ Wilsons and the Deshaun Watsons, and how that plays out. And then there's the free agents, the Mitch Trubisky's, the Jameis Winstons, and the Jimmy G's. So there are still a few names out there. The top name is gone. So you do have to recalibrate in terms of what your expectations are, what you're willing to pay as a team looking for a quarterback, and whether you're just going to throw your hands up and perhaps focus on the draft, because there's so many uncertainties with these free agents and soon to be and guys who could be drafted like Russ Wilson and Deshaun Watson. So Denver felt like the perfect fit because of the Nathaniel Hackett connection coming from Green Bay to Denver to take that job. Clearly, Aaron Rodgers is staying back with the Packers. So maybe Nathaniel Hackett likes Jordan Love. He has spent time with him. Also, something worth noting, if they're not in on Jordan Love, that might tell you something about how Nathaniel Hackett feels about Jordan Love in that sense. So there are a lot of dominoes left to fall. You mentioned Denver, I mentioned Atlanta already. The Saints have something to figure out, whether Jameis comes back or not. Even the Titans could be in the quarterback conversation if the price is right, and they don't love Ryan Tannehill long term. He has 2 more years left in his deal, and they can certainly get out from that next year. So there's a lot of moving parts to sort out, and there are a lot of teams, 5, 6, 7, 8, you could argue, that need quarterbacks.
Yeah, you mentioned the Titans there. Yesterday you had them taking Matt Corral, a quarterback. You said, if Aaron Rodgers is not available. So let's talk about the Packers when it comes to the draft right now. You see them sitting there at 28. Your latest mock draft has them taking Andrew Booth Jr., a cornerback out of Clemson. Does this news about Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams looking at the tag now, does this change anything for the Packers when it comes to the draft?
I would like to break the spell going back to 2002 when they took Javon Walker. I would like them to take a wide receiver, and I've done that in recent mock drafts when I busted out that 2002 fun fact. And in this most recent mock draft, I had both Treylon Burks and Chris Olave going after the Packers selected Andrew Booth Jr. They're going to re-sign Jair Alexander, but they still need help in the secondary. Yes, they drafted Eric Stokes last year to play corner, and he did a really good job. But I think the primary concern is figuring out who else is coming back with Devontae Adams, whether it's Randall Cobb, Equanimeous St. Brown is a free agent. They have some other guys that are free agents that were contributors as wide receivers. But if a Chris Olave is there, he comes in and starts right away. Marcos Valdez-Scantling is another name, Alan Lazard as well. Olave is a name that you bring in right away because he can play right away. He ran in the 4.3s at the combine. He didn't play quite that fast compared to Garrett Wilson, but he is the technician as a route runner. Treylon Burks ran a slow 4.55 time, but he is much more explosive now than when you watch the Arkansas games. And I think he's a guy that comes in right away as a Randall Cobb type player, but much bigger and a bigger playmaker at this stage of his career. So there are going to be options at the bottom of the first round. And look, if you've learned anything from the Packers and that Jordan Love 2020 draft, trade up and get a guy you love, whether it's a Justin Jefferson or a Brandon Ayuk, but just don't trade up for a quarterback, because I think the lesson there is you're going to make Aaron Rodgers very angry, and it's going to make things more difficult for you as an organization and as a fan base. So I think wide receivers should be in the mix, but again, you have to go back 20 years to find the last time the Packers took one in round one.
And you do wonder if they will now consult Aaron Rodgers about what they're going to do in the draft. Our draft expert, Ryan Wilson, there. His first mock right now coming off the combine. Of course, he has a lot of work to do now, rearranging things in his next mock draft. You can find that Monday on CBSSports.com. Ryan, part of the crew at the Pick Six podcast, guarantee they are doing an emergency pod right now having to do with Aaron Rodgers sticking around Green Bay for the next couple of years. And when you take a look at the numbers compared to other quarterbacks at $50 million now, he is the highest paid player in NFL history by an average annual salary, topping Patrick Mahomes by about $5 million per year. Let's welcome in our senior NFL writer, Pete Prisco, to talk about this. Pete, as I mentioned, it has been about a year. Your hands are moving. You're ready for this. Are you surprised that this finally happened?
Well played, Aaron Rodgers, well played. I mean, you just got to bow down to the guy for the way he played the entire scenario. And now he's the highest paid player in the National Football League, $200 million contract. Now, we got to see the structure of the contract. There's probably some funny money in the contract, but still, well played. You go back to Green Bay. I always thought he was going back to Green Bay. It's a legacy thing. Where does he go? Where would he have gone that would have been better? There wasn't a better destination for him. He plays in a bad division. They're the clear favorites in the division. It was the smart move. It was the right move. And all I can say is well played, Aaron Rodgers.
So well played there. I mean, it's hard, I think, for any of us to go inside the mind of Aaron Rodgers. He is very calculated. We all know this. We heard Brady and Danny say, look, we don't think it was about the money for him. What went into his decision, and how much was he really exploring other teams?
Well, I don't think he really was exploring other teams. I think the decision was probably coming down to whether to retire or continue to play. And $50 million a year can influence anybody to keep going. So I think that had something to do with it. They were going to pay him a boatload of money anyways, but I think it was how they would structure the contract, what the contract could do for the team, because they're in cap hell right now. They have a lot of work to do to get this team to come back and be an effective team and be one that can compete for a Super Bowl. Starting with Devontae Adams, I think they will tag him to start. Ultimately, love to work out a long-term deal with him, which I think they can and will do. And then you got to try and figure out what you're going to do on defense. I mean, both Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, they can save you $27 million to let them walk out the door. And Zadarius Smith didn't play that much last year, and they still got as far as they did and played well on defense. So that's one option. I think Preston Smith is another one. And you can restructure some contracts. So you can make the cap anything you want to, Amanda. It's just a matter of how you finagle it and what you do for the short term rather than the long term.
Okay, so look, we saw the Bucks go all in. It worked. We saw the Rams go all in. That worked. Super Bowl rings for both of these teams. We know Aaron Rodgers is chasing this. Is this all in for the Packers, and can it work?
Well, I think if you bring back Adams and you do it that way, yes, it can work. I mean, they were right there. If they don't have a punt blocked against the 49ers, who knows what they do the next week. And you know, I'm glad you mentioned the Rams. The Rams have 4 guys at the top of their cap list that will count for about $80 million of cap this year. And yes, it's the stars, but it still takes up a big chunk of your cap. What that does when you have a player like Rodgers making a ton of money, you have a player like Adams making a ton of money, David Bakhtiari as well. What that does, it puts a premium on the drafting, it puts a premium on cheap free agents. And I think Les Snead nailed that with the Rams, and now it's going to be up to the Packers to do the same thing. It's tough to do, but it's better to play games with stars than without them, and I think the Rams taught us all that this year again.
Pete, every single person we have talked to says, what about Jordan Love? So I'm going to ask you, what about Jordan Love now?
Well, he's going to be a backup. I mean, I don't think there would be a market for him or a substantial market. However, I will say this. You look around the league at these quarterback-needy teams and what's available in the draft and in free agency, maybe somebody will inquire. And maybe somebody will say to the Packers, hey, look, maybe we'll give you a third-round pick or fourth-round pick for him. I haven't seen that ability yet, so I don't know if that'll be the case. But when you look at the free agent quarterbacks, Mitch Trubisky is going to be a hot name. And in the draft, if this was a normal year, probably none of those guys would go in the first round. They're all going to be forced up. I think this is going to be an opportunity where maybe somebody will make a call for him, but I don't know if they'll trade him, and I don't know what they would want in return. But as one guy who needs a quarterback told me in this league, I spend a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure it out and fix that position.
So when it comes to fixing that position, I mean, there were teams out there like the Broncos thought they had a great shot. More recently than not, we heard about the Titans were very interested in Aaron Rodgers as well. What do you think happens to those teams? Do we see them turn to free agency, more so the draft? Where do they look now?
Well, I think the Titans will play with Tannehill. You know, for all the criticism of Ryan Tannehill, I think they go back and play with him. They're not a pass-based offense. They're a run-based offense. When everybody's on the field and doing their job, and that means Derrick Henry, they're good enough with Ryan Tannehill. Now, the question becomes, are they good enough to win it all with Ryan Tannehill? But I think if you look at this list of quarterbacks across the board, he's better than Winston, he's better than Bridgewater, he's better than Fitzpatrick, he's better than Taylor, he's better than Cam Newton. On the other side, project. Probably the most NFL ready is Pickett, Howell project, Ritter project. So if you're the Titans and you got a team you think can compete, I don't know if any of those guys will help you more than Ryan Tannehill. So I think they're stuck. They'll stick with him. As for the Broncos, Mitch Trubisky attractive to you? Or you play with Drew Lock? What do? I just don't think it's a great situation for the Denver Broncos or the Carolina Panthers, who probably have to draft one, or the Washington Commanders. I mean, on and on it goes. If you don't have a quarterback, you have big problems.
Pete, we appreciate it. Tipping your hat there to Aaron Rodgers and the way he played this whole thing, and probably us as members of the media. We appreciate it. For more things NFL, make sure to download and follow the All Things Covered podcast with our one Bryant McFadden, two-time Super Bowl champ, and his cousin, Patrick Peterson. During this offseason, they're going to be talking to a lot of players, giving you a lot of insight as to what is going on around the NFL. Make sure to download and follow. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.